Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So before I get started with this video, I just want to make it perfectly clear. I don't take any joy or satisfaction in talking about this issue. This is a very disappointing situation. It's a sad situation to see an African American icon fall to such a degree. This is a man who has done good things in our community in terms of supporting Black colleges and universities, in terms of presenting positive images of Black people on television and in film. So I don't take any joy or satisfaction seeing this man fall. With that being said, though, I have to explain why I support the jury's verdict in the Bill Cosby case. The first reason that I support the verdict in the case is because of Bill Cosby's own statements, the statements that he made in his deposition, where he basically raised the whole question of consent. You know, this is what Bill Cosby said when he was talking about groping Andrea Constand. He said this: "I don't hear her say anything, and I don't feel her say anything. And so I continue and I go into the area that is somewhere between permission and rejection, and I am not stopped." So there, he's acknowledging that he did not have clear consent when he proceeded to sexually assault this woman. And he admits in his deposition that he gave her drugs before he proceeded to sexually fondle her. Also in his deposition, he talked about how he had 7 prescriptions of Quaaludes, and he would use these Quaaludes on young women that he wanted to have sex with. So I think that that's damaging, and that goes to this whole thing of modus operandi, this man having a, a way of doing things, a pattern of drugging women that he wanted to have sex with. Another thing that's very damning about this deposition is the fact that in his deposition, he talks about how he doesn't think Miss Constand was after his money. In the deposition, he talks about how all they wanted was an apology at first. He discusses this. And another thing that is very damning about his deposition is the fact that he admits that he apologized to Constand's mother. And the question is, why would you apologize if you didn't do anything wrong? And he also admits in his deposition that he offered to pay for her education. Why would you offer to pay for someone's education if you didn't do anything wrong? Why would you do that? So the deposition in and of itself is very damning. And there is a reason why Bill Cosby and his lawyers did everything that they could to try to keep that deposition sealed, because it is very damaging to Bill Cosby's case. It makes it clear that this is a man who gives drugs to women. This is a man who admitted that he wasn't clear on whether or not this woman, Andrea Constand, consented to his sexual conduct. And that's very damning. That's very damaging to his case. And for those of you who have not read those key excerpts from his deposition, I will include links in the description box so that you can read it for yourself. And one thing that's really damaging in his deposition is he talks about a situation involving another woman where he says that he can't recall if she consented or not because it was so long ago. I mean, what kind of person would make such an admission, if they had never engaged in this kind of conduct of drugging women and stuff like that? If they're clear that they don't engage in this kind of sexual misconduct, there would never be a situation where they would say, I'm not sure if she consented. I don't remember if she consented or not. There would never be that kind of situation if someone is engaged in regular consensual type of conduct. That would never even be a question in their mind whether or not somebody consented to something. Now, the second reason why I support this conviction is because of Bill Cosby's prior bad acts. First of all, 60 women have accused this man of sexual misconduct, of sexual assault. 60 women. You mean to tell me that all 60 of those women are lying? I find that incredible. I find that very difficult to believe. And I haven't seen any shred of evidence of any kind of conspiracy at all. No one has presented any kind of proof of a conspiracy. All they have offered is conjecture and speculation. Now, during the trial, during this retrial of Bill Cosby, 5 women testified against Bill Cosby. And these women, when they testified, they laid out basically his modus operandi, basically explaining how this man operates. All these women, most of these women, talked about how they were lured to his home or his hotel under false pretenses. For instance, he used his status, he used his fame to lure these women to his hotel, and then he took advantage of them. There were young actresses, for instance, that he was offering acting tips to. You know, that was the lure that he used to get them in his hotel room or in his house. He also promised to, do a photo shoot with somebody, with one of these women. They came to his house or his hotel under the pretenses of a photo shoot being done. Another person came to his home being told that they were going to practice acting improvisation, acting like, this particular woman was intoxicated and stuff. And once these women were lured to his hotel or his home, this man basically took advantage of their trust and drugged these women. One woman had menstrual cramps and he offered her some pills to help her deal with that. Another woman, he prodded her to drink so that she could relax and so that she could get into this role of pretending to be a drunk. Another woman, he offered her some blue pills, according to the testimony that was given during trial, to help her with a cold. And once these women took these pills under false pretenses, they lost consciousness and they became basically paralyzed. They couldn't move. And at that time, Bill Cosby, after they're unconscious, he proceeded to assault them, sexually assault these women. So that pattern, I don't think is a coincidence. And these women were brought before the court and they offered sworn testimony of what happened that day, those days when they were sexually abused by this man. Those women were to be judged by the court. The court was to determine whether or not their testimony was credible. They heard hours of testimony. These women were subjected to cross-examination, meaning the defense counsel had every opportunity to discredit them, to prove them to be liars, to prove them to be presenting false information. And as far as the jury was concerned, defense counsel failed to discredit these women. While these women had the courage to testify, Bill Cosby chose to remain silent. And I think that that speaks volumes. And I know that most good criminal defense attorneys would advise a client under these circumstances not to testify. But I think that that speaks volumes. You had these women bold enough and courageous enough to get on the stand and testify and be grilled under cross-examination. But Bill Cosby refused to testify because he knows that he is guilty. And his attorneys know that it would be damaging for him to testify. If he were to get on there and testify, he would have been grilled like a steak on a pit of fire. He would have been grilled about those statements that he made in his deposition. and he would not have been able to withstand that tough questioning. So that's the reason why he wasn't on the stand. And I think that his statements in that deposition, again, were self-incriminating statements. And again, that is the reason why they did not want to have those statements exposed. And again, that's the reason why they didn't want this man to testify. And I think that the jury, as the trier of fact, they weighed the evidence. They considered the testimony. They considered the cross-examination, and they determined that these women, those 5 women, were credible. And they determined that Andrea Constand was credible. You know, her case was backed up by the deposition that Bill Cosby made. People want to talk about a conspiracy. Nobody forced Bill Cosby to acknowledge that he continued to go into an area that is somewhere between permission and rejection. That don't sound like somebody that has someone's consent. Nobody forced him to make that statement. So his case was destroyed just by his own testimony during his deposition. That's what destroyed his case. His chance of his defense and all that kind of stuff, his opportunity to get off in this case. His own words destroyed him. Nobody conspired against Bill Cosby. He conspired against himself by engaging in this sexual misconduct and by making those incriminating statements during his deposition. Again, there's a reason why they did everything in their power to try to seal that deposition. Another thing is this. You know, as was pointed out during the trial, I read over, several articles talking about the trial and different testimony. The settlement, the fact that this man would pay over $3 million to this woman tells you that there was some validity to her claim. If there was no validity to her claim of being sexually assaulted, there's no way that he would have paid that kind of money. He wouldn't have paid that kind of money. It wouldn't make any kind of sense for him to pay that kind of money to someone that just made up some story. It wouldn't make sense, again, for him to offer to pay for her education if there was no guilt in this situation. Nobody forced him to offer to pay her money. And then a lot of people will bring up the fact that, that she filed a complaint against him, a criminal complaint against him, a police report against him, like a year after the incident happened, and the prosecution decided not to proceed. Well, it has since come out that if they had this information that was contained in that deposition at the time when they were conducting that investigation, they would have charged Bill Cosby. So the fact that he wasn't charged back in the day doesn't prove anything. Now, a lot of people want to talk about some conspiracy. They want to paint this as if this is the evil white man after this black man. How is it a white man's conspiracy when you got 2 black jurors on the jury? And then people want to talk about a feminist agenda. How is it a feminist agenda or some feminist conspiracy, white feminist conspiracy, when 7 of the jurors were men? That doesn't make any kind of sense. So I don't buy this conspiracy theory stuff. And another reason why I don't buy it is because people want to act like there is some great incentive to conspire against an 80-year-old man. A man who is well past his prime. A man who is soon to be dead. I mean, as an 80-something-year-old man, he's not going to be around much longer. And the fact that you have people actually thinking that the government or, some secret society is conspiring against him, that is absurd. This is not like it's not like he's some kind of revolutionary. It's not like this is Malcolm X. It's not like he's some Martin Luther King. It's not like he's some Huey P. Newton or a Fred Hampton. This is a bougie Negro who looked down upon black people. This is a bougie assimilationist Negro who had so much negative stuff to say about poor black people. And now those same group of poor black people are the ones rising to this man's defense, talking about some conspiracy theory. When this man made mockery of how black people speak in poor communities, he made mockery of situations involving police brutality when he gave his ridiculous pound cake speech. But yet and still, people want to act like this is some martyr, like this is some man that was such a threat to the system. And you have these people concoct these ridiculous conspiracy theories about the fact that this guy tried to purchase NBC way back in the early 90s. So they're going to wait all the way to 2015, 16 to try to lock this man up. This is absolutely ridiculous. This man is a sexual predator. This man has been found guilty in a court of law. This man is a predator. He preys upon women, luring them into his premises under false pretenses, drugging these women, and then sexually abusing these women. That's what this man does. And he has gotten away with it for years because there are people out here that will defend him regardless of how much evidence is presented. You could have 1,000,000 people testify against him, but yet you will have these conspiracy nuts come up with all kinds of excuses behind that. And they wonder why people don't come forward with these types of allegations when they are being demonized, when they are being pushed aside and dismissed because this guy is a celebrity. If Bill Cosby was any other person, if he was not famous, if he was just the neighborhood guy, if he was what y'all say, Pookie or Ray Ray, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. There would be no debate about whether or not he was guilty. The only reason why there's a debate and a discussion is because he's a celebrity. The only reason why there's a debate and discussion and people are so defensive of this man and, are fans of this man is because of his celebrity and because of his wealth. That's why they're so blinded. And it's a shame to see, people have this false sense of black pride. Black pride doesn't mean that you defend rapists. Black pride doesn't mean that you defend people that sexually assault people. That's not what black pride is about. That's not what black unity is about. Some of these victims of Bill Cosby's were black women. Black women have accused this man of sexual assault. But y'all just want to ignore that. Y'all want to ignore the voices of those black women. Just ignore it. And then people want to bring up all these cases of white people who have engaged in sexual misconduct to try to change the subject, to try to deflect, to try to have people talking about these other rapists and criminals and stuff like that, instead of talking about the case that is before us, and that's Bill Cosby's case. The fact that you have white people that are accused of various crimes, that does not exonerate Bill Cosby of his crime. It doesn't exonerate him. And, certainly all people that commit crimes need to be held equally accountable without a doubt. That guy Harvey Weinstein needs to be in jail. And I think it's just a matter of time before some charges are brought against him. And, that's a very valid point about charges being filed against other people who commit crimes. But let's not pretend like that negates what's happened with Bill Cosby, that somehow that exonerates him, that somehow that excuses him, that somehow that means that we can't talk about Bill Cosby. I was reading in this Root article where you have these people taking an attitude that basically says black rapists matter, where they want to defend this kind of person that does this kind of stuff. And, another thing, it wasn't presented at trial, I don't believe, but this is a man who has joked about drugging women and taking advantage of them. He's done routines talking about Spanish fly. And I know some people want to say, well, that's an aphrodisiac and blah, blah, blah. But the fact of the matter is, he's talking about putting drugs, some kind of substance in somebody's drink in order to take advantage of them sexually. That's what it boils down to when you cut through all the BS. This is a man who's joked about this on several occasions. He had a stand-up routine that he did back in the 60s. And you can't tell me that that's some conspiracy. Nobody made this man tell those jokes. Nobody made that man get on Larry King and joke about Spanish fly. Nobody made that man create an episode on his Cosby show talking about his special barbecue sauce that is used to seduce women. Nobody made him do that. And I think that all of those things suggest a pattern of behavior with this guy, a pattern of behavior that people want to close their eyes to and close their mind to simply because this man is a celebrity, simply because this man is America's dad, quote unquote. Well, I mean, now it's clear that this man is America's rapist. And it's a sad day, man. It's a sad day that this man who wants to be all self-righteous, preaching to black people about how they need to behave when he's living foul, when he's sexually accused of sexually assaulting 60 women. And you people want us just to believe that this is all a conspiracy without presenting a shred of proof of this imaginary conspiracy? Those jurors had an opportunity to hear from those witnesses. They had an opportunity to sit in court day after day for hour upon hour. They had an opportunity to listen to the defense counsel and listen to the plaintiff's counsel and all of that. And they reached the right decision, and they found this man guilty of 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault. And I think that there's justice here. Now, because of his age, we don't know how much time he's going to get. He probably will not get a lengthy sentence. I would not be surprised if that's the case. But yeah, man, I just had to voice my thoughts about this situation, man. And it's just a shame that you have some people that are basically using this for race baiting purposes. They want to use this to stoke these feelings of race pride and some racial conspiracy and all that kind of stuff. I was looking on Umar Johnson's page, and every other picture he had was basically talking about some kind of setup of Bill Cosby. Prove that it's a setup. Prove that it's a conspiracy. So far, I haven't seen any proof. I mean, it's just like a lot of these conspiracy people. They don't offer any proof of these conspiracies. And, I get the fact that the criminal justice system has been unjust to black people. I understand that. I understand the history of black men being lynched in this country based on false allegations of abusing white women or making advances towards white women. I understand that very well. But that history should not cloud our judgment to a degree that we can't see a wrong that is staring us right in the face. Again, if this was anybody else, nobody would be talking about some ridiculous conspiracy theories. So with that, I'm going to say peace and blessings to each and every one of you. Tell me what you think. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Peace.